You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 258, As Blood Runs Black. Hosted by Dan Terry.
I had to go find a whole bunch of other dudes to play these songs.
And Joseph Wren. Blast beats, breakdowns, dude growling at the mic. Presented by discussmetal.com. And if your allegiance to the Dark Lord is broken by a pitchfork, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan.
So I can tell you straight up when your blood runs black. It's like you've been bleeding for a while, but then like it's not like a fatal wound, so like it dries up pretty quickly, and when your blood dries up, it turns black.
So coagulation is what you're saying.
Yes, basically, your blood turns black. It doesn't run black.
Is this an Osmosis Jones situation where your white blood cell is blue and it just falls apart halfway through the movie?
I have no idea. I stopped watching after the zit scene, so I'm not entirely sure how that process actually works. But I can tell you that your blood, it doesn't run black. It only runs red. If you're a human being, it's red blood. So let's talk about this band, and I want to apologize right on top of this podcast. I am on vacation right now. I know you don't know it, but I am. I'm gone. I'm out eating Mickey Mouse shaped waffles. I'm doing the thing. Like $12 waffles. It's gonna happen. It looks like Mickey Mouse.
Happy birthday, dude.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that right now. Okay, like while you're listening to this, I'm doing that. So I guess the only thing I can really say is we're going to talk about As Blood Runs Black. And I'm going to be honest with you, Joe. This band, I had very high hopes for. I think they more or less did everything that they could do fine. But, we'll get into it. I have to say, in listening to As Blood Runs Black, I feel like I've already heard As Blood Runs Black.
This is metalcore.
Well, it's kind of that weird middle ground between metalcore and deathcore. So like their first album came out in 2006, so it's a little bit more deathcore than I think a lot of bands were at the time. It reminds me a lot of With Blood Comes Cleansing, if you remember when we talked about them on Patreon. It's the metalcore riffs, your Gothenburg death metal riffs, or if the band isn't aware that they're using, Swedish death metal riffs. Yeah, they may just be trying to do a really good Black Dahlia Murder impression.
Or Haste the Day without the melodic vocals.
Well, actually, there are melodic vocals at the end, which we'll get to that, because this band has had almost more member changes than, a certain three-letter band that we talk about all the time on this show. It's crazy looking at the album credits for each of these records and seeing that it's essentially a different band every time.
If what you're looking for is that metalcore experience from the mid-2000s, you're going to get that with this band. It's not bad, but you said it right up front. I've heard this band many times before. I didn't hate any of it, but I did look for what makes this band special. I don't think anything really does make this band special, and that's unfortunate because it's solid. I believe people are actually playing these instruments, and that's the one thing I really looked for. I looked for the fake metalcore drums. I looked for the ultra syncopated everything. And what I got was a fairly pure experience.
That's pure.
Pure metalcore. Mixed with some deathcore, because you got to sneak in those breakdowns and vocals.
Oh, dude, the breakdowns are the best part. I mean, that's the part that I was looking forward to the most, which I guess is what most deathcore fans would say. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely not reinventing the wheel at all. But I mean, I still kind of enjoyed listening to it. I just am probably not going to rush out and buy a bunch of records.
Well, before Dan transforms into a true metalcore fan, I'm going to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. So if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We do enjoy our 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion. If you want to leave us a review, you can do that on Apple Podcasts. You can give us a starred rating, apparently, on Spotify. I found that out this week, that it's not a typed review, but reviews are reviews, and they're good things. And I don't know how much that has to do with the Spotify algorithm or whatever. So you should probably just continually shouting very loud to everyone that you know to listen to Discography Discussion so that we can circumvent the algorithms that are out there. Another thing that we've been doing lately is we are up for promoting what you want us to promote. So if you want to come on as an episode sponsor, email us at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Let us know what you're peddling, and we'll see if we can help you peddle it. Over in the wonderful world of feedback, we got an email from John Humphreys. He says, you guys should totally cover the Comeback Kid discography. They have a new album coming out this Friday too, so it would be good timing. Well, I can tell you we are going to talk about the new Comeback Kid on Patreon, and we will get to Comeback Kid someday. I can't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be soon, but we are. Comeback Kid is definitely one of the bands that I personally follow, and I'm usually very excited every time they release something, so we'll definitely be on that.
$1 gets you into that exclusive album review feed.
We got a message on Patreon from Lost Fiction. It's more like a comment, less like a message, but we're going to roll with it. This was in reference to our special Patreon review, Distance Over Time by Dream Theater with John Drake of the Nerf Herder Council, a.k.a. the longest Patreon review that we have ever done.
Good.
He goes, I cannot wait for you to discuss the new Dream Theater, A View from the Top of the World, hopefully with John Drake. Well, I mean, we have to now. Is there already a new Dream Theater record? Do we have to do another Dream Theater album? Have they done enough to where we have to go back and talk about the band a second time?
I don't know that Dream Theater will ever put out that many albums, but I'm sure John Drake is down to revisit that band anytime you'd like. I'll ask him.
Oh, I think I'm sick. I'm kidding. I'm on vacation. I can't be sick. I can't be sick.
So, Dan, tell me about As Blood Runs Black.
As Blood Runs Black is an American metalcore / deathcore band, and they really are kind of in the middle there. They're from Los Angeles, California, and they have 3 albums out, and that's how you can tell that it's my vacation week, because I picked a 3-album band to talk about. I might do it next week too. I don't know yet, but I might do it next week also, because it's like a 9-day vacation. It's going to be like a lot of $12 waffles.
It's a really long drive.
It is a super long drive. But As Blood Runs Black, the first time I ever heard them was on a YouTube compilation of the sickest breakdowns of all time or something like that. And now several almost 2 decades later, I can say the greatest metalcore breakdowns that you've heard so far, because this was before bass drops, and that was bass drops changed the whole game for everybody for a couple of years there.
Hey, Dan, you remember that time when the bass drops were only on the Korn records? Because John just had that pad, right? It was all bass drops. Blind kicks off, then you hear boom.
Yeah, they did have that. Yeah, all the way back in 1994. You're actually 100% correct. As Blood Runs Black was created in 2003. They go that far back. And they used to be called a band called Broken Stems, but then they decided to change their name to As Blood Runs Black, which I think is a much more metal name. It's a little bit like I'm in a Hot Topic corner, crouched against the wall, and I'm telling everybody that my blood runs black. I wonder if there's any connection to the Darkest Red by the Agony Scene. I'm picking up that vibe of no, if you just dig deeper, the blood just gets darker and darker, and then eventually it's black. I don't understand it. It's just red blood unless it congeals, and then it's black.
Does it all become a silent planet of metalcore bands?
Oh, we did this already.
Layers and layers and layers.
So the interesting thing is they formed like a full lineup, and they went into the studio in 2005 to record their first album when essentially the entire band, except for I believe the bass player, quit.
How does that work? How do you bring in new band members to play songs for instruments that are not the bass, unless they had all the demos recorded and he just farmed it out to people that he knew. Don't get me wrong. The first record is solid.
Correction. The everybody quit except for the drummer. That's where it was. Okay.
So we didn't have to relearn the beats then.
We didn't have to relearn the beats. The beats were still there. So dude basically just hired an entire new band, and then they ended up recording their first album, which goes by the name of Allegiance.
2006.
So for a 2006 metalcore release, this thing's pretty banging. You've got your At the Gates riffs with way faster drumming, really fast drumming. This dude was pissed off. I would be too, because I had to go find a whole bunch of other dudes to play these songs whenever we were going to record these songs earlier. And so for 2005, 2006, I mean, this is as close to deathcore as you were going to get before deathcore became like a really popular genre.
Blast beats, breakdowns, dude growling at the mic. It's everything the rest of the world wanted when Zao wasn't mainstream enough.
I don't know about that, but apples and oranges there. But I think that as Blood Runs Black, like I said, they remind me a lot of two Christian bands, because that's just the side of the pool I came from. With Blood Comes Cleansing, and there was another band called Common Yet Forbidden that, like, if I played you Common Yet Forbidden and then I played you as Blood Runs Black, you'd have trouble telling which band was which. What I do like about As Blood Runs Black is their focus on guitar leads, melodies, and solos, which is something that the deathcore kind of moved away from. But you see, you still got the bones of metalcore here. The only thing really deathcore about this are the breakdowns and the vocals, the deep, ultra guttural vocals that kick in. But you've also got your like black metal-ish shrieks going on. Your kind of Black Dahlia Murder type of vocals. This alternation between deep and growly, higher pitched vocals. Like I said, I respect it. It's just very par for the course as far as this genre goes. And I don't necessarily want to throw shade, because I think more than likely they were one of the first bands playing this style that got like any sort of like actual attention by metal fans. Because I mean, in 2006, we're still looking at like Kill Switch Engages and Azalea Dyings, and it's not that those bands don't still exist now, but they were at the height of their popularity at that time. So here you've got something for the metalcore fan that doesn't want to listen to, quote, all that mainstream shit.
And yet this sounds so mainstream. The one thing it's missing is the melodic choruses. And I could see a fan of this style latching onto that as their underground thing. Yeah, my record is heavy, and it's got the riffs, and it sounds like those bands, and all the riffs start with that dun 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 dun. But these guys don't sing, so it's heavier than you. I feel like I've met that guy more than once.
Most of the bands that sounded like this at this time didn't sing. I mean, almost nobody. Because you say it sounds like mainstream, but in 2006, this would not have been like mainstream metalcore. This would have been for the kids that are like, oh, I don't want to listen to melodic singing. I don't want to listen to this or that. I mean, it's really, but it's got enough blast beat in it to sell somebody that doesn't listen to death metal on the fact that it's death metal.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there's that aspect of it. And like I said, I think it's a good record. It's hard for me to sit down and listen to 37 minutes of this and not just immediately think of all the other bands that I've heard that sound like this. And like I said, I don't want to throw shade, because I'm not sure if the bands I'm mentioning were around as early as these guys were. So maybe they're not generic. Maybe they're innovative. It's possible that other bands heard this band and kind of went in this style. This is actually a kind of deathcore that I actually kind of enjoy a little bit more, because it's a little bit more musical. It's a little bit less nu metal, because like nu metal and deathcore like really got together after 2010 and started living together. But at this time, if you were going to play deathcore, you had to put more emphasis on your death metal blast beats, your At the Gates riffs, and your growly, snarly vocals, and your breakdowns. Your breakdowns had to hit hard, because you still got hardcore kids at this show, and they need to dance. There's no other way they can get their anger out other than dancing to As Blood Runs Black. So I like the guitar leads. I like the vocals. I like the breakdowns. There's nothing wrong with this at all other than overexposure.
Agreed. There's nothing special here, but it's not a bad album. The question I have is, what's going to happen in 2011 when Instinct comes out?
Did you ever watch that episode of, I think it was Robot Chicken, the Star Wars episode, where it's the Cantina band is standing up there playing, and they're like, do, 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 right? And they get done, and one of the aliens walks up to the mic, and he's like, hey, guys, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and seeing our show tonight. You know, I think really, really glad to see you guys here. Hope everybody's having a great time. What do you guys want to hear next? You know, we got, some time left. And somebody else, just play the same thing again. Okay, all right, guys. So same thing again. All right, let's get do 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 do. That's kind of what this record is. But it's interesting because this is not really the same band that put the last record out. You have
it still sounds like metalcore.
Yeah, you have a different vocalist. You have the same drummer. You have the same bass player. But I mean, other than that, you've pretty much got 2 lead guitarists that are brand new and a singer that's brand new. However, this is still amazingly consistent with the past material.
This is the point in the past 20 years of music where everybody was sick of that Gothenburg thing. Don't get me wrong. You will always have your super fans. Music will always evolve, but this is more of the same for the people that wanted more of the same. And again, it's not bad. I've heard bad metalcore. I've heard bad deathcore. I've heard so many bands get on stage and play that Gothenburg riff with those vocals, and it's fine. It's enjoyable while you're seeing it. I don't know that this band is somebody's favorite, but it's fine. I could see myself listening to this if what I wanted was that style for the next 35 minutes. This is just more of that. And isn't that what you wanted if this is what you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit more melodic than the first record, and it's definitely better produced. The first one was kind of raw, and I liked that about it. Obviously, the breakdowns hit, extra hard. But this one's a little bit more refined. I'd say this one's actually a little bit less deathcore, a little bit more traditional metalcore, which is weird because this is more like the era of deathcore in 2011. And so you'd think that they would have gone harder for the throat, but you actually have a little bit more of a melodic sensibility on this one. I mean, they still blast, they still slam those breakdowns, and the music is still similar enough to the last record where you don't lose confidence in the band, which as I've said before, is very impressive considering how it was the same bass player and drummer, but it was a different band essentially. And they were able to pull it off, so if you waited the agonizing 5 years for As Blood Runs Black to put out their second record, then you would not have been disappointed with this. And I think it's a little short, but I think that's perfect for this type of music. I think I'd be annoyed with it if it went over 45 minutes or something like that. I think this guy's a solid 33 minutes. And yeah, I mean, they do a great job on this one. It's a little bit more melodic. I think they were maybe looking for bigger opportunities here. And this is, it's another rock solid As Blood Runs Black record. Again, I don't think it's going to redefine how I feel about metalcore or how I feel about deathcore. It's interesting to hear a band playing this style in 2011. Maybe they waited for all the copycat bands to die off so that they could release their magnum opus.
There's always going to be fans out there, regardless of what you play. Not everybody jumps genres with popular music. This is a style that I have a hard time going back to it and finding innovation. There's definitely not innovation here. If anything, they waited a few years, they put out a new record, and they're just playing to their audience. I think it works. It's still interesting. It's just not amazing. I've heard all these tricks before. I'd ask you what else you have, but I think I know how this story ends.
I mean, the only thing that they haven't really done is the clean vocals yet, which is, respectable. I love the cover artwork on this album a lot. It's blue. It's just a blue cityscape. I don't know. It's weird. It's very Tron. And I'm into that. But yeah, I mean, I think that this record is basically fine. I mean, I know that sounds terrible. There is a really cool instrumental right in the middle of it called Tribulations that's cool. This band always includes like an instrumental track, and it almost like shows off like what they can really do musically, but they're just like so caught in being a deathcore band that they can't pull those other influences out, at least not on this record. It gets a little bit more interesting on the next one, but as far as where the band it was in 2011, I think really it was more of a, we've had all these lineup changes, and for all I know, the guys that were on this record had been in the band for years, since 2006. But I think it was kind of a return to status quo sort of moment where it's like, yeah, we're back, and you don't recognize half the people that are in here, but I don't know. This is a hard one. I don't know the full story, and so if anybody from the band listens to this, I'd love to hear the full story. So hit us up. But, I do think that they did perfectly fine here. I don't have a whole lot else to say about it. I'm sorry.
2014, Ground Zero.
Now, Ground Zero, this one's probably my favorite one. And not for the reasons that you would think. Usually whenever a band gets a new vocalist, which this is the same band that recorded the previous record, so we've got at least that going. The only difference is the vocalist has changed. I think this band's had over 6 vocalists at different times, like a lot of touring vocalists and things like that. More people out there that can sing deathcore than you think that they can. But this is the first record where the band really doubles down on the melody. I mean, they come off banging on the first song, like, we don't want you guys to lose hope. But like as the album goes on, more like melodic vocals kind of start creeping their way into the sound. And I hate to say it, but like if I'm listening to 2 albums that objectively sound the same, getting something like this at least makes it a little bit more interesting. I don't know if it was like the most creative choice to throw clean vocals into the mix, but they did make it work as well as they could with their sound without compromising their heaviness. They have moments where it's just straight blast, and then moments where it's a little bit more refined, a little bit more melodic. And I think it works really, really well. And it's interesting that this late into their career that they're, they're choosing now to kind of stretch their musical legs a little bit more.
Maybe it all ran together for me, but this album feels more creative. It sounds like the guitars are taking turns, almost like Zayo, almost like Norma Jean, Oh God, the Aftermath, where it's very blatant that one person is playing the dissonance and then the next one does. It's a very modern metal thing to do, but it's cool. It works here in this context because so much of metalcore and deathcore guitars run together because the album is supposed to sound big, right? I feel like this one focuses on the playing more than some of their contemporaries, and I think that's interesting. To hear on an album in 2014 that sounds like this, that's playing this style, a little bit of melody, and a clear emphasis on the players. I think this one is the most interesting listen.
I do too. This is the one that my ears kind of perked up to a little bit more. I don't necessarily think that the clean vocals are good, but I'm happy to hear them doing something different than what I've heard already 2 times in a row. And so, because I don't feel like the melody is super deep. It almost feels like it was added later, or at least like the melodic vocal was added later. Because I do think that as this band goes on, their records do get more melodic and they get a little bit more accessible. And I think that's a good thing from a diversity standpoint. I think hardcore, like deathcore fans, are not going to really like it that much. But but like I said, I'm okay with it. I like the diversity of it. And it's a shame that these guys just had such a hard time keeping a lineup together, because I think that's the big struggle. I think maybe if we didn't have that much turmoil in the beginnings of the band, that we may have had a more unique sound by now. I think sometimes it's like, yeah, let's sit down and write great songs, and then everybody quits, and then you're like, okay, well, let's try to just play these songs, and then you hire some new guys on, and then they sit down, and then you're having your first album all over again with your new band. And so it takes a little bit to get those innovation juices kind of flowing.
Do you think this was a case where the band had to deal with the fact that they were new and they maybe just hired someone that can play the Gothenburg stuff? because it feels that way until you get to this album. Then there's more layers, almost like somebody pushed it creatively and insisted that we do something else, guys. The metalcore thing is fine, but can we add some keyboards in places? And I don't mean those keyboards.
Right. It's interesting, though, because this was on a different label. This was on Standby instead of Media Scare. And apparently they had some sort of huge problem with Media Scare. I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. I know that's not super informative, but when you're going back like 10 plus years looking for news articles about this kind of stuff, it's either not there at all or the websites have been scrubbed from the internet, And so I don't know what the deal was, but inevitably they decided that they were just going to break up after this because it was just too much. They got screwed over too much, and I think too many people coming in and out the door, I think is going to stifle you creatively because you're too concerned with having enough people to be on stage to play the songs. Then the songs sometimes tend to take a bit of a backseat. And I don't think any of their material is bad. I know it sounds like I'm like slamming on them. It's not bad at all. It's just that this was a very trendy style at the time that they were out.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if they innovated it or not. If they did innovate it, then hats off to them because it sounds really good. It sounds really cool. But unfortunately, I had so many choices of bands that sounded exactly the same over the years that this one just got kind of overlooked for me.
Final thoughts on As Blood Runs Black. Dan.
I mean, if you're looking for a time capsule of what deathcore was before it became what it is now, how do you go from something like this to Emmure or Attila, that sort of stuff. These were the original deathcore bands, these were the guys that were pushing metalcore as hard as they possibly could to birth it into the quote unquote new genre. I know deathcore's not a new genre, but whatever, like as far as like these bands rising to prominence, in the minds of metal fans, deathcore was a relatively recent phenomenon when this band was on the scene. So I think they're definitely worth checking out. If you haven't heard this kind of deathcore before, if you lived through it like I did, you could probably take it or leave it.
I think this band is okay. If you're looking for a throwback on deathcore from the mid-2000s, you can't really go wrong with this one. I think the last album is the most interesting listen, but don't ignore the first two albums, even though they might be carbon copies of that metalcore band or that deathcore vocalist. It's just a fun listen. Put on some energy and fall back into the hardcore pit. If you haven't done that in a while, this might be exactly what you're looking for. I had a good time listening to the band this week, but it's just not for me. It's not my nostalgia. I like this style, but I'm not looking for another one of those bands. I feel like this style has far exceeded its trend, but that doesn't mean you can't have a good time listening to As Blood Runs Black. So check this band out. Dan, what's your album of the week?
Hands down, it's not even close. It is Oh What the Future Holds by Fit for an Autopsy. Will Putney and the boys bring it pretty hard on this one.
For me, it's Isolation Ritual by HarborLights.
Ooh.
Did you check this one out yet?
I haven't yet.
If you're not part of it, you definitely need to join the Discord server and get in on these conversations, because every week around Friday, we start to get recommendation upon recommendation of bands on Bandcamp. And this one snuck up on me. Dan, it's up your alley. It's Hum plus Tool. You're welcome.
I will have to check that out.
Take us out, DFT.
First of all, I want to thank all of you guys for listening to the podcast. And again, I apologize for the shorter episode. We will surely get back to one that you'll have to break apart into 3 parts to listen to the entire thing sometime soon. But, I just want to say thank you guys again. And if you guys are new to this podcast and you want to reach out to us, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/discography discussion. You can follow us on Twitter at discussmetal and on Instagram at discussmetal. You can also join our Discord server. There'll be a link in the show notes. It'll take you to our Discord server where we are having all kinds of conversations about music pretty much all the time. It can sometimes be a little hard to keep up. If you would like to support the show monetarily as a episode sponsor, you can send us an email again at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Let us know what you're selling, and we'll see if we can help you sell it.
And on that note, this has been episode 258 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Scrooge McDuckin through your money.
$1 a month gets you to that exclusive album review feed.
Right now